All right, political science students, this video is for American government, and if I get a constitutional law class, that would be great too. But we are talking today about um, the Supreme Court and this one rule I have. Now, before I begin the video, a couple things I have to mention. One, I just finished a run, and so I'm a little self-conscious about my look here. Two, I've been saying because of our situation, I'm going to be talking about the coronavirus. And my political science students should know this already, but I was going the 100%. And what that percentage represents is not everyone is having the same kind of quarantine. And with student populations out there, a lot of students are being left behind. Elementary all the way up to college students. Yeah, there is those students out there. My dog is bored, by the way. There is students that are 100%, they can handle the situation. They have reliable internet, they have computers where they have video equipment on it, or the camera on the laptop. They got this covered. But there's the students who have none of that, and the campus was their access to the internet or reliable, and there's the in-between. And I'll be perfectly honest, as a policy analyst and all that stuff, we have not been doing a good job for the students that fall underneath the 100%. So one of the things when we talk about big issues, and you should already know this, is what level of government is the most appropriate. And people are falling under the assumption that it's the local government, but this is bigger than that. So if you or a parent or in dual enrollment with parent would like to call someone and address these issues, I would recommend the state assembly or state senate members. That's the best level to understand this issue of students being left behind. We always talk about equity in underserved communities, and we've done a pretty bad job about it with this coronavirus. And that's just my opinion. An observation. Let's get into it. And this is another observation that leads into the discussion that we have in class. And the discussion question will be at the end. This can be used for multiple political science courses. And there is this rule I have called the Judge Roberts rule. Now, if you don't know my rules yet, or maybe you didn't miss that class, I name rules after famous people or famous situations. And the reason why I do that, it's easy for me to remember. And so an example of that is my Elton John rule. When I was in high school, in junior high, I didn't like Elton John because, I grew up, in my neighborhood, I grew up listening to gangster rap, and when I went to middle school and high school, I listened to heavy metal, and those, I didn't think Elton John was anything in my area. And then when I was in college, I heard Benny and the Jets. And I was like, whoa, that's Elton John? And then I was more appreciative of it. So my Elton John rule is, even if it's a genre that I don't like, I should be able to appreciate it. So I'm not a country fan, but I can tell you that would be good country. What is good country? Because the way the singer, how good the singer is, or the guitar melody, or so forth. And same thing with pop music. I'm okay with pop music, but not the biggest fan. But I know that, I don't want to say any names because there's always these conflicts when it comes to pop music. But you understand, it is something that I always remember in those types of situations. By the way, Rocket Man is awesome. So the John Roberts rule. Now, originally this was not called the John Roberts rule. This was called the Dred Scott rule. Now, if you don't remember from your history class, and you should remember this rule, it's a famous case that happened before the Civil War that pretty much the Supreme Court ruled that people were property. It was the slave that went into free territory, free state, free area, and then said, well, I'm a free man now because I'm in a free territory. And it was a long ruling, and it took a while, but eventually the Supreme Court ruled that they're property. The slaves were property. Even though they were people, they're property. And so it was a horrible ruling. And by the way, anybody who argues that, it was the correct ruling for the time, no, it was not. But the reason why I bring this up is, if you read about that trial and the justices involved, especially the Chief Justice, they talk about that no matter what they did, whatever the cases happened before or after, that judge, and by the way, judge, Supreme Courts are usually named after this Chief Justice. So growing up, I grew up under the Rehnquist Court, and then now we have the Roberts Court because whoever the Chief Justice is. And so the Dred Scott Chief Justice was like, no, this is what I'm going to be remembered for. It doesn't matter my history, what I did before or after. This is what we're going to be remembered for. That my court is going to be known for that. And the reason why I bring this up, and the reason why I brought it forward, is there is times, if you look at, especially after Dred Scott, there are times where there might have been a court of conservatives or certain political persuasion, and yet a ruling happened that went against what people thought might have happened. And my opinion or observation is this occurs because the Chief Justice is conscious of their history, their legacy. And so if the possible ruling happens that might put that court, like the Dred Scott case, into infamy for the rest of their lives. I wonder if the sirens that are going off behind me are picking up on the camera. Anyways, then the Chief Justice or somebody who is close to the Chief Justice tends to vote on the side of history. And so when you talk about civil rights rulings, when you talk about voter rights acts, when you talk about all these different issues, especially in the modern era, and social issues, if the court would look like it's on the wrong side of history, then that plays a factor in the legacy of the court, and they tend to rule on the side of history, the right side of history. Now, what is this about in the modern era? Why are we talking about it now, the Roberts Rule? Because the one thing that occurred that was controversial for John Roberts, it was a conservative. His court is a conservative court, even before the appointees from Trump. And Kennedy is a swing vote and whatever, but it still was conservative court. And the ruling on gay marriage, which people thought it could go any way. They thought it was, it could have gone any way, but Roberts went with the justices on the left. And people were surprised at it. But by the way, FYI, I was not surprised by that, because Judge Roberts did pro bono work for gay equality before. It was a little thing that popped up, and some conservatives were, worried about it, and the conservative media and the party established like, no, he's good. Well, guess what? Side of history, he went on it. He went towards it, and because of that, that's why I call it the Roberts Rule, because John Roberts sided with the side of history that would look more favorable towards his legacy and went with that. But here's the thing about the Roberts Rule. It usually only goes towards social issues. Anything that society would make it look back. The technical stuff, that rule doesn't really apply. And what I mean by technical stuff, like corporate issues where, there's a lot of things to it. But here's the thing. There has been some major rulings on the Roberts Court. So what you're supposed to do in this discussion is you have your books, and you're supposed to be reading, and you can look up rulings by the Roberts Courts that might give it an infamous legacy. You might have the one ruling on gay marriage, but Citizens United, the Voting Rights Act, gerrymandering, lots of things that they think at the time look technical. Oh, we're just technically creating something. They're the first court to rule on the right of gun owners in a clear fashion. It was just handguns, but they're really the first court, and went against a lot of history on that. Look up the history of the Roberts Court and make an argument that, is there any rulings that you think, and you can name the ruling and then how it will be more infamous and a legacy negative for John Roberts and his court. And if you think there's none, that its history will favor out and it won't be anything close to Dred Scott whatsoever, you can write that in the arguments, but make some kind of argument clearly stating your position and reasoning why underneath. It doesn't have to be a paragraph, it could just be a couple lines, but as long as someone can read it and it's part of the discussion. Ooh, I should use that as a catchphrase. All right, you know what to do. That's the thing, and it will be in clear and detail on that. Stay safe, all that good stuff.